Truth seems to be something that we can seek for. People don't typically seek for things that they know do not exist. Arndt speaks of the real truth being something which is discovered as if it already exists and is waiting to be realized by humans. All of this points to the reality of propositions. Another reason for thinking that propositions exist is because we ascribe properties to them. For example, we ascribe the properties of truth and falsity to them. For any object that we ascribe properties to in some possible world, including this actual world, it must exist. Arndt unknowingly himself affirms the well-known truth maker, truth bearer distinction that I explained earlier. Arndt states, and I quote, reality itself is not truth, but statements about reality can be if they're true. So, if we have to determine whether it is true before we call it truth, then the truth is whatever statement can be shown to be true, and that's simple enough. Close quote. We see that Arndt clearly distinguishes between that which makes something true and truth itself. He ascribes truth to statements about reality. However, there are good reasons to think that statements or sentences are not the primary bearers of truth. Why is that? Well, you can have multiple sentences in different languages that assert the same truth. You can also have distinct sentences in the same language that express the same truth. This shows that there is something more fundamental that is shared amongst the distinct sentences. The content between sentences is what is shared. There are other reasons why one should think that propositions exist, but that should suffice for now. Since propositions are intrinsically intentional, and so are mental entities such as thoughts, they are the perfect candidates to be propositions. Unless we have some independent reasons to think otherwise, we should regard propositions as mental entities. Now, if propositions are best understood as mental entities that can be true or false, and at least one necessary truth exists, then a necessary intellect must exist. This is because thoughts cannot be had apart from minds. And since all humans are contingent, this means that humans, as well as their human thoughts, are not going to qualify as necessary propositions. We need something which is necessary itself. We need a necessary mind that could not fail to exist to account for the existence of necessary truths.
In my experience, believers hate nothing more than the burden of proof, and that's why they try to redefine what evidence means so that it is no longer a fact that indicates. Because they can't give you any facts, not to point their way, so they give arguments instead of evidence, essentially word games trying to define their God into existence, with erroneous or fallacious assumptions built into most of them. You can't declare something that you don't know to be true. You can't say that it's true if you don't know that it is. All the time, I hear people say, well, I know for a fact there's a God, except you don't know that, and it's not a fact. If it was a fact, it'd be objectively verifiable data. We'd both be able to show that. So one of the challenges that I made earlier this year was when people tell me all the time that they present evidence and I ignore it. Well, okay, well then let's show me something. Show me objectively verifiable data. Show me something that we can both confirm is actually true. That is also indicative of your position.
Also agree that sentences and beliefs can be true or false. However, what I'm saying is because sentences can have multiple expressions which are not identical and yet the same truth is being expressed, that means there's something more fundamental than the sentence itself, which I'm arguing for is a proposition.
Okay, so you're making the statement that your microphone exists and what color it is, what position it is, and all of these things are independently verifiable. And so we can now verify its position, its identity, its coloration, all of these. These are all different things that we can show to be true. That doesn't mean that the sentence is the primary bearer of truth. It's the fact that we can verify it that makes it the primary bearer of truth. Is it verifiable?
Yeah.
Therefore, we're there. Okay, so thank you for proving your microphone exists. Can you go on and do that for God?
No, because this microphone is on the table. Correct. Now, I'm saying, is this microphone true?
Is the microphone true?
Yeah. It doesn't
No.
make any sense. That's the whole
Right.
point. So that means you're making a distinction between what
Whether the
makes something
statement is true
and the statement.
Right.
Now, I'm saying
Is the
to you,
statement true? The
I'm
thing
giving an
itself
argument.
isn't true.
I'm giving an argument
Okay.
that I agree with your position to a certain extent that there's a distinction between the sentence and the thing that exists that makes that sentence true. We agree. But I'm saying there's something more fundamental than the sentence because, and my argument is, one of my arguments is, that you can have multiple sentences either in the same language or different language, or you can have a belief which has the same content as the sentence. And all of those can be true, yet none of them are identical. So, what do the beliefs and the sentences on paper and the sentences spoken, what do they have in common, which is true?
If the statement, whether it's written or spoken, has the same amount of information and it's verifiably accurate in each bit of information, then you don't have an issue with it. You can show that it's true. You can show the truth of it. Therefore, the statement is true. Every part of the statement is true. We can verify every part of the statement.
Yeah. So, but
Okay.
I'm saying it's the content. The content, or what you're saying is the information, is what matters. Because the sentence, if I say that the microphone is on the table and I say that in English and then I repeat it in Spanish, those two sentences are not the same, yet they express the same truth.
The same pieces of information as I just said so many times.
Correct. So then that means there's something.
I'm glad we agree on this. We can continue arguing it for another 25 minutes or so, the part that we agree on.
No, because what I'm saying is, are you agreeing with me that there's something more fundamental, which is true, more fundamental than sentences? And I'm saying that's a proposition.
I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
I'm
so
saying,
that's where we're differing.
okay, I don't see where the difference is. If you make a statement and you're making an assertion and you can't back the assertion, you're telling me that, as so many creationists do, they always want to cite a fact, that dinosaur soft parts prove the Earth is young. No, it doesn't. Here's all the reasons why. But you just assert the fact, and we're supposed to accept it because you say so.
Okay, so
No,
let's.
in this case, you're actually giving information for your God, but you're giving information for your microphone that we can both verify is correct. Okay,
Okay.
good. I'm glad you can defend your microphone.
Oh well, that's not what I'm doing, but we'll move on from that point. Let me explain another way to try to get at what I'm trying to say. I used in my first premise of my argument, I said either the law of non-contradiction is true or it's not. Let's take an example like the law of non-contradiction. Do you believe it's true?
Again, I wouldn't say that I believe
Okay, I'm
it.
sorry about the word belief,
Yeah.
but I mean it in a context of.
To my understanding, yes.
Okay, so the law of contradiction is true. Was it true before any sentence existed?
Okay. We're only arguing about the truth of the sentence. As I said before, the existence of the thing is not a truth. It's whether the statement is true that makes it truth.
Yeah, so
So
now
are
I'm
you
asking.
speaking truth or are you not speaking truth? That's the issue. So if you're saying things that you can't show to be true, then you're not speaking truth.
Yes, so now I'm asking you about the law of non-contradiction. We both agree it's true. Was it true before either one of us or any human being ever said the law of non-contradiction is true? Was the law of non-contradiction always true?
Again, as I told you before, repeatedly, there can be things that are true that we don't yet know.
I
The
agree with
issue
that.
is we cannot say that they're true until we can show that they're true.
But they're already true.
Until we can show the truth of it, as I said.
But they're already true before we say they're true.
Yes, but we can't say that they're true until we know that they're true. So we have to have a reason to say, and we have to be able to show the truth of the statement. Does anybody feel like we've just been round and round?
You're proving my point, and that was
Oh,
one
I'm
of my.
proving his point.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that was one of my other arguments when you said.
We're in total agreement. He's proving my point. I'm proving his.
You said that there are truths, which I quoted you, and you said again here, which I agree with. There are truths that have not been discovered yet. That means that truth exists prior to your sentence.
In other words, you can have statements as yet unuttered that may well be true. But if you say a thing and you can't show the truth of it, that's a lie. That's technically a lie. So when you say, and that's what all faith is, asserting empty speculation as if it's a matter of fact, pretending to know things you don't know. Both of those are lies. That's what faith is, but both of those are lies.
Because by what you're saying there's truth, there's something out there that's waiting to be discovered and waiting to be realized. So you are affirming that truth, which you're not really grasping. Truth exists independently of the sentence. The sentence expresses the truth.
Once again, the truth is what the facts are, but you can't state what the truth is if you don't know what the facts are. You can't show the truth of it.
We're not disagreeing about that.
I'm glad. Can we get past it?
We're disagreeing on whether truth exists independently of sentences. And I'm giving you an argument to show that truth exists independently of sentences.
The topic isn't, can I frame a question that Aaron can't answer, or what doesn't Aaron know? It's, is the evidence for or against God? So for clarity, features of reality are the actual. They are not true. Sentences express a concept. Neither the sentence nor the concept is true. Truth exists only in the comparison or evaluation between the actual and the concept. Your concept of the sentence 2 + 2 = 5 might not match another person's concept of that statement. If the concept accurately represents the actual, we evaluate that as true. As a truth seeker, I seek accurate concepts about the actual. I'm seeking to gain concepts of reality that evaluate as true. The facts of reality aren't truth. They are the actual. And truth doesn't exist, in quotes, until there's a concept for comparison. The measure of truth, or how the concept compares to the actual facts. So your previous attempt is to claim that truth exists without a concept. But now that I've actually rejected that, no concept, no statement, the truth exists only in the comparison between the two of them, I will rephrase the question you were asked multiple times during the debate. What is the objectively verifiable fact that confirms the God concept that you expressed is actually correct?
Yeah, so you misrepresented me when you said that I think that truths can exist apart from concepts. No, in fact, what I argued is that truths are mental entities. So I don't know why, maybe it was because we got bogged down in other parts of stuff, but it seemed like you didn't understand that. I'm sorry that you're upset, sir. I don't understand. I'm just not a fucking idiot. Okay. Maybe you're not an idiot, but maybe you can't hear very well because I never denied that truth. What? I never denied. Well, maybe I can. Well, Matt, maybe I can actually correct you first on your lie.
I don't
or
think
your
so.
Misstatement. On your lie. Because you just claimed what I said about truth that was not true.
When Aaron asked you for your objective fact to prove God, you said
That's the second part of your. That's your second.
You're gonna allow me to
Sir,
finish?
you can go back to your seat and
You
sit
better
down.
can't.
You can. You can go back and sit down because I'm going to finish responding. I'm going to finish responding to your question, sir. This is not a debate. This is not a debate. This is not a debate. If you would be quiet for a second. You do because maybe you don't want a response.
I apologize.
Maybe you don't want a response.
You are absolutely correct. I should sit down and be quiet. This is your debate. If you don't want to present the objective fact,
I am, but you're not allowing me to get to it.
do that.
I am, but you're not allowing me to get to it. Okay, you're making it a second debate. You're making it a second debate. What you can do is you can sit down and be quiet. You can sit down and be quiet. Okay, go ahead and sit down. Go and sit down. Yeah, but he's still trying to talk when I'm trying to give my answers. Anyway, so I was trying to correct the first part of what you said, your preamble, which was a misstatement, or I claim that it's a lie, because you claimed that I believed that truth was somehow independent of any concept. No, I never claimed that, sir.
That's what you said.
In fact, what I said was that truth is a mental entity, right? So that's fully compatible with it being conceptual. I never said anything about truth existing apart from concepts whatsoever. I never made that claim. Now, what's the verifiable data? Well, I was trying to present it, and it's the fact that truths exist, that true propositions exist, and that at least one necessary truth exists, which, because necessary truths and truths in general are mental entities, that's going to entail the existence of a necessary mind. Now, Matt, I know you're sitting down and just wrapping this up. If you'd like to debate the topic, we could do it another time. I have no problem with it. And then you can speak as much as you want and tell me how much you don't like me. Go ahead.
And I would like to clarify, just in common verbiage, as I mentioned before, that philosophers often use definitions, have different definitions than common parlance. When you say something and the statement is true, we can verify that it is true. When people ask or challenge or maybe defend, he's telling the truth. So that is the context that I've been using this whole time.
I'm glad to admit that I am probably the only idiot here. My question is to Jake. Jake, it looked like you tried to present an evidence in almost 7 pages. I am sorry to admit that I did not get the evidence. Maybe it was because it was too long, so I could not hold my attention. Is there any way to express your evidence in 3, 4, 5 sentences, 30 seconds? Is there a way that common people like I can understand and still it will be long like 7 pages? Possible?
Yes, I mean, I think you mean 7 premises, not 7 pages. But yeah, simply what I tried to sum up in my response to Matt was my argument is an argument from necessary truth. Okay, I'm making the claim that truth exists. It's an actual existent thing. Okay, not that it's independent of any concept or anything like that, but it's actually a real thing, okay, and that necessary truths exist. Truths are mental entities, okay, and I gave an argument to explain why they're mental entities because they have certain features.
That was I understood. Go forward, please.
Yeah, they have certain features, one of them being intentionality, which is that they are about other things, which are the same sorts of things that mental entities have. Okay, so I'm making the claim that truth is a mental entity, it's a type of mental entity or thought, and that if you have a necessary truth, you need the existence of a necessary mind or intellect in order to ground that. Otherwise, you cannot account. I'm explaining it to you. It's very simple. If all human thoughts and all thoughts besides God's thoughts or mental entities.
You're trying to prove what you don't involve what now.
No, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying. You asked me to explain my argument. I'm not trying to prove it now. That's not what I'm trying to do.
So 2 plus 2, therefore God.
Well, you don't even believe 2 plus 2 equals 4 necessarily. So what's the difference?
I fully accept that normally 2 plus 2 would be 4. Yes. But there's no way that you can jump to 2 plus 2 equals 4, therefore God.
Well, that's the debate.
And there was no fact given. Anybody hear a fact in there? Okay.
Sorry, I'll try to answer shorter.
Hi there. As a former Methodist, I attend these debates to see if there's a reason that I should start believing in a God or what specific God. And it's frustrating because every time someone gives an argument, it feels like it's not evidence that they're playing philosophy word games and defining truth. And it's like all other truths in the world that I know of can be demonstrated with experiments or discoveries to show something is true. It's not just words or scripture that's true, it's what they represent. And I'm wondering if there's any evidence you have that can be demonstrated in science, not philosophy or Webster dictionaries, just hard evidence.
Yeah, there are other arguments that I could have presented, and I've presented in other venues that focus more on what you would consider tangible science and things of that sort. Certainly, there are arguments, but I didn't present a scientific argument. I presented a philosophical argument for the existence of God.
But of course, the purpose of the debate was to present evidence, not arguments.
Yeah, and a philosophical argument can be evidence. That's the point.
Not on a scientific topic.
It's not scientific.
Like the previous questioner, um, I'm trying to understand your argument because perhaps you have some kind of evidence that I'm unaware of, but I'm having a little trouble understanding your argument. So I'm paraphrasing here. Is your argument that because there that reality exists, then it's necessary that a mind existed that created it. Is that where we're going here?
No. I'm to sum it up. I mean, I try to sum it up a different way. Uh, that truth is dependent on minds, and that if you have a necessary truth, it has to be dependent on a necessary mind. That's the simplest way I can state it.
Okay, like,
Which it doesn't.
but
It's just a false
Well,
assumption.
you don't know if they exist or not, so you don't know.
Doesn't matter. You're making a leap that's unjustified.
okay. So, is there evidence for God? Your evidence is because there's
E plus 2,
minds.
therefore God.
No, there's minds that there's a necessary mind that created that.
No, because truth exists, and truth is a mental entity, and necessary truths exist, then you need a necessary mind.
But okay, but you didn't give any evidence. Like, even if there
did.
were a necessary mind, what is your demonstrable evidence that it was a God?
I appreciate the question, ma'am. My evidence, again, was the existence of truths, the existence of at least one necessary truth, which then would entail the existence of a necessary mind.
Except that it doesn't.
I gave arguments and evidence for the existence
You
of
gave no
truth. Let me
evidence.
finish, sir. You're going to get your turn. Don't worry. Okay. I gave an argument and evidence for the existence of truths and necessary truths. Now go ahead.
Well, you didn't give either one. What you did was you wanted to assume, just like if there's a necessary being and it's dead unconscious material, that somehow magically transforms in your mind into an immaterial living consciousness. Same thing. 2 + 2 = 4. Therefore, God. That was your leap. It's completely unjustified. You presented never at any time an objectively verifiable fact supporting your position. You've had 3 people come up in the Q&A so far. All of them have asked you the same question. What is your evidence? Obviously, at this point, even you should have figured out you haven't given any.
I have given it.
Then why the hell does nobody know about it?
We've all been waiting to hear what evidence you have for a God. I'd be curious to see what your definition of evidence is and if you believe that you've presented anything that actually touches evidence for a God.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same question again, which I already answered.
Funny that.
But the
I wonder why that is.
the definition I gave, if you were listening in the presentation.
Oh, see, it's
Okay.
because you're too stupid.
No, because that's what you're saying to this gentleman here.
That's
You're
not
saying
what
the
I
same
said.
thing.
Maybe
You
you're
said
too
you
stupid,
said
but
that he
that's
didn't
not
want
what
to
I said
listen to
him.
your answer.
I made an observation that was not what you say.
Exactly, that's the same thing.
Which is completely different, thus not.
Let me put it on the screen here. Okay, very quickly. I said, and I quote, I take evidence for a hypothesis to be that which raises the probability of a given theory to be true, and I take evidence against hypothesis to be that which lowers the probability of a given theory to be true. So I did define what evidence is, and Arnn himself didn't give it verbatim the same thing, but it was similar.
Evidence, the available body of facts or information indicating whether a belief or proposition is true or valid. What kiss? That's what we got out of you.
Sure.
Right. Next question.
Hello, Aaron. As an atheist, I find myself in the scale of Richard Dawkins as a 6.9. Meaning
7.
That's my question. So I don't affirm that there's no God. I
Yeah,
believe
God is
there's
not
no
even
God.
possible.
So what evidence do you have for that?
I believe I already expressed
You didn't
it.
see it. He presented it all night. Where were you?
If God is not even a possibility, as I explained, we don't even have a possibility to consider. We have science considers what is supported, what is not supported. Where was the support for God? He was supposed to present it. So we are left wanting.
That's not evidence against God.
Quick follow-up.
No, but it's not evidence for God, is there? And
I
that's all that
presented it.
matters.
I presented it.
That nobody saw.
Plenty of people saw it.
Where are you?
Well, we can look on the live stream and see what all the people say.
Okay.
Very
Yeah.
quick.
But they're not in this room.
Very quick.
Yes.
Very quick follow-up.
I do have a follow-up. So I do believe that with an infinite universe, we cannot know everything.
Right?
So I know that there's no evidence for God. We cannot claim that there's none.
Yeah.
God.
I didn't, again, it's what is supported and what is not. What is the evidence for God? We don't have any. We have evidence against God. We have nothing for God. Therefore, we have no choice but to conclude there evidently is no God.
Next question.
Okay, my question is for you, Jake. You believe that everything is contingent of a God, right?
Everything other than God is dependent upon God. Yeah.
Okay, why?
Why?
Why and how?
Because I believe God created everything.
How is that evidence?
I didn't say that was evidence. You asked me why. You asked
Okay,
me
do you have evidence for it?
what?
Anything else to that? Okay, thank you very much.
You asked me why do I believe it? It's definitional.
I
No.
love that kid.
All right, we're gonna move to the next question. Step up a little bit. All right.
My question is for Jake. I understand your premise as there's truth outside of people's stances, and before they can figure it out, it's true. How do you reconcile the fact that what you consider to be truth without evidence may not be true?
What I consider to be truth without evidence may not be true. I don't understand. Can you clarify?
So you stated that your stance, your position, is that truth exists outside of humans, right? So if you come across something that's not true, how do you reconcile that? It's not true. Like what
Well,
if,
you
for
know,
example, like your God is not true. You can't prove that it is, but you
well, I
can't prove
think
it
I
is not.
have.
How do you reconcile that? How do you
I
reconcile the
reconcile
lack
it.
of knowledge?
I reconcile it by demonstrating, as I think I have, and today in other places, that God does exist, and I do believe that truth, as I explained earlier, is dependent on what the facts are, as Aaron keeps repeating. That's not a difference of opinion. But that doesn't mean that truth is identical to the microphone, because we don't say that that's true.
Okay, next question. Okay.
Hi, my question is for both speakers. Aside from a god or gods, can you think of anything that exists that people have to argue for the existence of using philosophy?
God is kind of unique in that category, isn't he?
I can answer, yeah, plenty of things. We can talk about mathematics, logic, as the gentleman just asked, morality. There are plenty of things that people argue in philosophy that has nothing to do with God.
Does mathematics exist in the same way that God exists?
Yes,
Okay.
Okay, next question.
they're both necessary.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had a question about I guess for Jake and Aaron, please, if you can pipe in there. You said that I understand the argument that you presented tonight, Jake. I guess maybe I might be the only one that fears that truth exists outside of our minds, kind of tapping on what people have been saying. So my question is are all thoughts from humans the same as the thoughts that God has?
Is you done?
As a qualifier, there's a little extra to it.
No,
With that.
God has thoughts that we don't have. Correct.
But are those thoughts, is the idea of God thought the same as a human thought? Are they the same things?
No, they're not identical. No.
So then why are they contingent upon the same thing? Why are they both contingent upon a mind?
What do you mean? Sorry.
If they're not the same thing, then why are they both contingent upon the same things, i.e., the existence of a
Well,
mind?
because I can have multiple thoughts that are contingent upon my mind, and those thoughts are not the same. Just as God can be a mind that knows things such as truths, and he can know many truths that I also know, and yet my thoughts are not his thoughts. They're not identical in that way.
If they're the same, if they're both are the same thing, God thought, same thing, they're both contingent upon a mind. God's thoughts are dependent on God's mind. Our thoughts are contingent upon our minds.
Yeah.
But they're not the same, but they're contingent upon the same thing, which is
Because
the
they're both
existence of a
related
mind.
to a mind. Yeah.
Okay, so
They're both related to a mind. But the difference is that God is necessary, so he's a type of being that can ground necessary propositions. Human beings are contingent, so they don't fulfill that role.
Yeah. God is not necessary, he's imaginary.
Okay, next question.
Hi, my question is for Aaron.
Aaron.
Aaron. Sorry.
By the way, I tried to call you Aaron the whole time. I
Yeah.
think you could at least give me that. I mean,
Aaron,
I
so it
appreciate
seems.
that.
yeah.
Okay.
You have no idea how old this gets.
So, Aaron, it seems from the debate here and other debates I've seen of yours, and it seems like your general position on what evidence entails seems to be empirical, scientific evidence.
Yeah.
My question for you is, how do you justify asking for empirical, scientific evidence for something that is, by its very nature, non-empirical and outside the scope of science?
Because every example I gave would be different if there was a God. All of the holy books, all telling contradictory things, all claiming to be the absolute truth and the revealed word,
Well,
even though
that's-
they're mutually exclusive and violently conflicting. And when they're full of falsehoods, then the absolute truth of the Bible is no better than the absolute truth of the Quran when they're both demonstrably wrong.
That's not what I asked. I'm asking why
Right,
do
so
you
you-
ask for empirical? Because the whole time you've been asking Jake,
Right.
give me demonstrable, empirical, scientific evidence.
Right, so
why
for
are you
example,
asking for scientific, empirical evidence
something
an
that
entity
would
that,
be
that by its
empirically
very nature is
verifiable,
not empirical?
which
and
but
not-
is empirically verifiable. Either there is a God and when there's an afterlife, meaning that we have to have souls, or we conclude that we don't have souls. I realize this doesn't apply so much with Islam because Islam imagines that we're all going to be reanimated corpses that all have to eat food in hell. But there's still the supernatural aspect for which there is zero support for anything supernatural at all. That includes miracles, effectively the same thing as magic. They have essentially the same definition. So all we have the support for God. We have a handful of books that are all wrong about everything. And then we have theologians, past and present, all over the place, who all contradict each other and make statements we can prove to be false. So we don't have any evidence for God at all. But we do have quite a lot that I listed, and I can go back over it with you, for things that are inconsistent with God. So facts that actually contradict the notion of there being a God. Why don't faith healers work in hospitals? How come a faith healer has never healed an amputee? If there was a God, these things would happen. If magic existed, you would have people like Hermione and Gandalf and Obi-Wan and Spock who would be able to demonstrate this ability reliably. We don't have that because that's just another fact that is against God. Nothing for God, plenty against. And these are all empirical because of course they would be. If there was a God, these facts would be different.
Well, look, I just don't think you're answering my question. 'Cause things like faith healers, all these problems we have with scripture, they're not really relevant to whether this non-empirical entity exists or not. The
Except that
problem
he is empirical.
You seem to be assuming that there must be some empirical evidence for something that by its very
Right.
nature is not empirical. And I
Except
think
that
that's where you're going wrong.
Every time that God reaches his ethereal hand into the prime material plane to affect any change in nature, he's going to pull his arm out dripping with physics. He's going to leave some residue of himself. We will have indications when miracles happen. When, if in the Twin Towers attack, if the plane stopped 10 feet short of the building and just stood there in space and then was slowly lowered gently down, I would think, yeah, you know what? That's a something that we can look at that. And that would be empirical, right? Empirical for God. But we don't have telepathy. We don't have telekinesis. We don't have teleportation. We don't have anything that would be consistent with the God. All we have are things that are contradicting God.
Next question. So this question is definitely for both speakers, and I apologize, Aaron, if it sounds like I'm trying to smuggle in a presupposition. I do admit that, definitely. Would the existence of a necessary mind depend upon it also having an effect on the material universe? I think you already answered that, but I would love to hear a bit more about it.
If there was a necessary mind, if we were a dream in the mind of Brahma.
So, presupposing that it could exist.
Okay,
Skipping over
if we presuppose the possibility that reality isn't real, that we're all figments of some God's imagination, then in that reality, there would be a necessary mind.
Would the existence of a necessary mind depend upon it also having an effect on the material universe?
Well, that's the instance in which it would. If we were, as the Zen Buddhists or whoever it was that put this, I forget, when they, obviously not Buddhists, but when they assert that we're just imaginary beings created as a dream of Brahma, and that when Brahma wakes up, we all cease to exist, that by definition would make Brahma a necessary mind.
Okay, next question.
Cool.
All right, question for Aaron. I had a different question, but you mentioned 9/11, so I'll use that as a jumping off. Is it a moral failing for a layperson to hold an opinion and act as if that opinion is true that contradicts the experts?
No. As I said, you're welcome to believe.
You were talking about experts.
You're welcome to believe whatever you want, as long as you express that it is a belief. When you express it as a fact, when you can't show that it's a fact, then it becomes dishonest.
So, but following the experts, are we obligated as lay people to follow the experts?
No.
When they, so we're allowed to contradict them, and that's fine.
As Carl Sagan said, arguments from authority are worthless. There are no authorities in science. Question them all you like.
All right. Building 7.
Next question.
Anybody see my eyes roll under these shades?
This might be a little funny, but are arguments evidence? Both participants.
The definition I just read was a body of facts.
Yes, sir.
Meaning
Jake.
objectively verifiable data.
Jake, are arguments evidence?
If you have evidence for the premises in arguments, yes.
Why didn't you?
I did. I gave them.
You had an assumption. 2 + 2,
No,
therefore
I gave
God.
them. I gave them.
And it
You
was
didn't like 'em,
it was
but I gave
erroneous. It made no sense, and it wasn't justified.
So, Jake, you said that arguments can be evidence if you have like facts or
Evidence.
evidence behind them. So, what's the evidence that you have behind the argument that God exists?
I already gave it. If you didn't get it, sorry to tell you.
It was just arguments.
Yeah, I gave it already. You're asking the same question.
Because, I mean, there's no like physical evidence that you've been able to present. It's all just been
Your
main
assumption
thing-
is that I need physical evidence. Do you have an argument for that?
Yes.
Do you have evidence for that?
Well, so we need evidence to prove that anything
Is that
exists.
a scientific claim or a philosophical one?
It's I would say it's scientific.
No, it's philosophical. It's a philosophical claim, and yet you think that I need evidence, yet you're up here asking a question which assumes a philosophical principle which you don't have scientific evidence for.
So the idea that
Thank you
2
very
+
much,
2
sir.
equals
Have
4
a nice day.
somehow requiring a magical mystical
Science
mind.
assumes many things that it can't prove, like
But it doesn't
mathematics,
assume
like
this.
logic.
It doesn't
and
assume
all
this.
of the other things that go
So
with it.
evidence is objectively verifiable
With
data.
that, I hate to do this to you guys, but just
Yeah,
because we
it's
do have to wrap up,